My ex-husband and his new wife mocked my infertility at a family dinner, toasting to healthy ovaries while glancing at me. He smirked. She couldn't even give me a kid. His wife giggled. Lucky me, right? I stood up, pulled out photos, and said, "Meet my twins I adopted last month." The room fell silent as my mother-in-law whispered, "You win." My name is Dana. I'm 41 now. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, in a modest two-bedroom home with peeling white shutters and a porch swing that creaks in the wind. I work as a social worker for the county's Child Welfare Division, a job that will stretch and hollow your heart if you let it, but one I've loved for over a decade. It teaches you that love doesn't always look how you thought it would. That's a lesson I had to learn more than once. When I met Clark, I was 28. He was 30, a fresh-faced lawyer with a tailored blazer and a voice that commanded rooms before he ever raised it. We met at a 4th of July barbecue hosted by a mutual friend who had big dreams of matchmaking. He had that lawyer confidence, slicked back with charm. I was skeptical. Too many smiles, too much eye contact. But he asked about my job, really asked, and he listened. That night, as the fireworks popped and faded, I found myself wondering what it would be like to build a life with someone like him. Turns out, it was easy to fall for Clark. He was attentive, brought me soup when I was sick, remembered little things like the type of pens I liked and how I took my coffee. We moved in together after a year, married 2 years later in a quiet garden ceremony where my dad cried more than I did. I thought we were happy. For a while, maybe we were. We waited a bit before trying for a baby. Careers came first. Then came the waiting. Every month, a new layer of hope and disappointment. Every visit to the fertility clinic, a little more of me chipped away. They couldn't find anything definitively wrong. Unexplained infertility, they called it. A cruel name that meant, we don't know, but it's still not happening. Clark tried to be supportive at first. He'd hold my hand after blood work, rub my back during hormone injections. But as months turned into years, I saw the shift in his eyes. Less patience. More frustration. The way he stopped asking how I was feeling, stopped showing up to appointments. He started working late, and I knew. A woman knows. I found the messages on his phone on a Tuesday night. I wasn't snooping. His screen lit up while he was in the shower, and something about the previewed message made my stomach flip. I opened it. Dozens of messages. Her name was Lila. An intern from his office. Half my age and, judging by the photos, completely comfortable showing off every curve. When he came out of the bathroom, I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone or cry. I just held it up and said, "So this is what affection looks like now." He didn't even deny it. Said he felt neglected. That it had been hard, living in a home full of disappointment. Then the dagger. It's not like we were building a family anyway. I left 2 weeks later. Packed everything I could fit into my car and moved into a short-term rental across town. Joanne, his mother, was the only one who reached out. She brought over soup, sat on the floor with me, and held my hand. She whispered, "You deserved better," like it was some great confession. The divorce was swift. Clark didn't fight me on anything. He wanted a clean break, and frankly, so did I. Within a year, he was engaged to Lila. By the next, they had a daughter. I saw the baby announcement on Instagram. It was carefully curated, Lila's manicured hand holding Clark's, a tiny onesie draped across her belly, the caption, "A miracle made possible by love." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I wanted the life they had, but because I realized that I was no longer angry, I was numb. Whatever had been broken in me didn't ache anymore. It had calcified. Joanne never stopped calling. She invited me to coffee, to church potlucks, even to her granddaughter's first birthday. I declined most of the invites. But when she called last month and asked me to come to Clark's birthday dinner, I hesitated. "Just a few people," she said. "I'd love to see you." Something in her voice pulled at me. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe I just wanted to prove that I wasn't hiding anymore. I wore a simple navy blue dress and brought a bottle of red wine I knew Joanne liked. Clark answered the door with a look that was somewhere between surprise and discomfort. Lila was behind him, all blonde waves and blank stares, cradling their baby like an accessory. Dinner was tense. Small talk clung to the edges of the room like fog. Clark talked too loudly. Lila laughed too often. Joanne kept watching me like she was waiting for something to go wrong. And then came dessert. Clark stood up, glass in hand. "A toast," he said, swaying slightly. "To the women in my life. My incredible mother. My beautiful wife." And he paused, looked straight at me. "To healthy ovaries." A few people chuckled. Lila leaned in with a grin. "Lucky me, right?" I didn't say anything right away. Just reached into my purse and pulled out 2 photos, one of a little boy with tight curls and wide eyes, and one of a little girl with dimples so deep they looked drawn on. Leo and Maya, I said, voice steady. I adopted them last month. The room went silent. Utterly silent. They're siblings. 2.5. Came from a tough situation. But they're safe now. And they're mine. Joanne's hand flew to her chest. Her eyes welled. Clark's smirk fell. Lila blinked like she was trying to process a language she'd never learned. Joanne whispered it. Just loud enough. You win. I didn't stay long after that. I didn't need to. I walked to my car with my head high, the photo still in my hand. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. I didn't go straight home after I left Joanne's house. I parked near the overlook off Blue Ridge Parkway and sat there, watching the distant mountains dip and swell under a heavy sky. The sun had started to set, casting streaks of gold and burnt orange across the ridges. I rolled down the window. The air was cool for late spring. I needed it. Needed to breathe something real. For the first time in years, I felt like I hadn't just survived something, I'd reclaimed a part of myself that I didn't even realize had gone missing. The strength didn't come from showing up or from saying those words at dinner. It came from everything that led up to that moment. The paperwork. The sleepless nights. The doubts. The visits with Leo and Maya before the adoption was finalized, when they still looked at me like I might vanish too. The kids had been in foster care for nearly a year when I first met them. I wasn't planning to adopt. I'd told myself for years that motherhood wasn't for me, not because I didn't want it, but because life had decided it wasn't mine to have. Then I saw Leo throw himself in front of his sister during a supervised visit when a caseworker raised her voice. He was just 2 years old, but his instinct was to protect. I sat in my car afterward and cried harder than I had in a decade. After that, everything changed. I started the process. Training, evaluations, home studies. I scrubbed every inch of that little white house, replaced the carpet in the spare room, read every parenting book I could find, even the terrible ones. And when the day came to bring them home, Leo wouldn't let go of my hand. Maya clung to a stuffed giraffe like it was the only thing tethering her to earth. The first few weeks were chaos. Maya screamed through the night. Leo barely spoke, flinching at sudden noises, hoarding food under his bed. I learned to sleep with one ear open. I learned that the sound of silence was no longer peace, it was worry. But slowly, they changed. Or maybe I did. Maya started humming when she played. Leo began whispering goodnight back to me. I cried the first time he said, Mama. Not because it validated anything, but because he meant it. Because he chose me. So sitting there in the car after that dinner, I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. Like I had run a marathon and just now realized how much my feet hurt. I didn't regret going though. Not for a second. The next day, Joanne called. I hope you don't mind, she said. But I told a few people at church about the kids. I laughed. As long as you didn't pass around their pictures like a yearbook. She paused. I'm proud of you, Dana. I always was. Her voice cracked a little when she said it. In the weeks that followed, things shifted. Clark didn't reach out, of course. I didn't expect him to. But I noticed Lila blocked me on every social media platform. That felt less like rejection and more like a gift. Joanne, on the other hand, started dropping by more. Sometimes she brought toys for the kids. Sometimes she just sat and folded laundry with me. She was careful, never overstepped. She asked before hugging Leo, let Maya warm up to her on her own time. One afternoon, she sat on the porch swing while Leo napped and Maya colored on the steps. I don't know what I did wrong with him, she said, not looking at me. You didn't do anything wrong, I told her. People make choices. She nodded slowly, then changed the subject. Things weren't perfect. The adjustment was still hard. I hadn't had a full night of sleep in months. I'd started skipping lunch at work to run errands or make appointments. There were tantrums, full body, soul-shaking tantrums that left me shaken for hours. There were nights I cried in the shower, the water masking the sound. But there were also moments. Quiet, ordinary, holy moments. Like the time Leo reached for my hand in the grocery store and didn't let go. Or when Maya stood on tiptoe to kiss my cheek and said, "You smell like cookies." Those moments filled in the cracks. They reminded me that love wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. And then, about 3 weeks after the dinner, something unexpected happened. I got a call from Lila. Her name lit up my phone while I was folding tiny socks on the couch. I stared at it for a long time before answering. Hello? Dana. Her voice was tight. Controlled. I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest. I felt a knot form in my chest. Okay. Are you trying to turn Joanne against us? The question stunned me into silence. What? I finally managed. She barely comes over anymore. And when she does, all she talks about is your kids. She even brought over drawings they made. She's obsessed. Clark's starting to notice. It's uncomfortable. I bit the inside of my cheek. I haven't said anything about you. Or Clark. But you showed up. You made a spectacle. I didn't make a spectacle, I said, voice low. He made a toast about my infertility. I responded. Silence. She was crying about it yesterday, Lila said finally. Joanne said she felt ashamed. That she should have stopped him. Clark doesn't even remember saying it. Then that's the real problem. She didn't reply. I'm not competing with you, I added. I'm just living my life. Another long pause. I just thought you should know, she said, and hung up. I sat there for a long time afterward. Not angry. Not sad. Just tired. Joanne came over later that week with a tray of lasagna and a bag of hand-me-downs. Maya clung to her immediately. Leo, too. I could see the guilt in her eyes, though she didn't mention the call. Instead, she just said, "Can I read to them tonight?" Of course. She sat on the couch with one kid under each arm, holding Goodnight Moon like it was scripture. I stood in the doorway and watched. Something about the way she rocked gently, her voice low and warm, made me realize how much we both needed this. Family doesn't always come the way you plan it. Sometimes it arrives in pieces, in leftovers, in second chances you didn't think you deserved. The days blurred into each other after that. Between work, school prep for the kids, and the slow grind of establishing a routine that didn't fall apart every time someone had a tantrum or a bad dream, I didn't have time to think too much about Lila's call. But every once in a while, it crept up, usually when I was doing something mundane, like folding laundry or wiping jelly off the kitchen table. I kept wondering why she'd really called. Was it jealousy? Fear? Or maybe just that aching realization that Joanne, her mother-in-law, didn't light up when she walked into a room the way she did for two kids who'd only known her for a few weeks. Joanne didn't bring it up again. She just kept coming by. Never too often, never without calling. She brought little things, like a new bedtime book or a secondhand jacket that still smelled like lavender detergent. And slowly, she found her rhythm with them. She let Leo help her with her garden. She taught Maya how to thread a needle, though her fingers were still clumsy and small. There was a quiet reverence to how she interacted with them, as though she understood the fragile history etched into their small bodies. One Saturday, while the kids were playing in the backyard and Joanne was trimming the rosebush that never bloomed right, she turned to me and said, "He was different when he was young." I didn't answer. I used to think he had such a big heart. But now I wonder if he just learned how to hide the smaller parts. There was nothing for me to say to that. I didn't want to agree, and I couldn't disagree. The words just hung there, like damp clothes that refused to dry. The following Monday, Clark showed up at my door. I wasn't prepared for it. He'd never come to my house before. I heard the knock while I was trying to wrestle Leo into a sweater that he insisted was too itchy. I thought it was Joanne, or a delivery. But when I opened the door and saw him standing there in a button-down and that same smug half-smile, my stomach sank. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What are you doing here?" He looked around the porch like he hadn't expected me to ask that so bluntly. "I wanted to talk," he said. "Can we sit?" I shook my head. "Just say what you came to say." He hesitated, like the script he rehearsed wasn't landing the way he thought it would. "Joanne won't stop talking about them. The kids." I didn't reply. She's over there more than she's over at our house. Lila's upset. Frankly, I'm upset. I crossed my arms. "You made a toast mocking my infertility in front of your family. What exactly are you upset about?" He winced. "I was joking." "No, you weren't. But even if you were, that kind of joke isn't funny. It never was." He glanced away. "You always took things too seriously. And you never took responsibility for anything." We stood there in silence for a moment. I could hear the kids laughing in the backyard. Maya squealed, and I could hear Joanne's voice, gentle but firm, reminding them not to pull up the tulips. Clark shifted. "Are you going to keep letting her come around?" I blinked. "She's their grandmother now. She's my mother. She gets to choose who she loves." His mouth opened, then closed. No argument came. Before he turned to leave, he muttered, "You always knew how to twist the knife." I didn't reply. That night, I sat on the edge of Leo's bed and listened to him breathe. He had fallen asleep mid-sentence, a small plastic dinosaur clutched in one hand. I brushed a strand of hair off his forehead and thought about how small he still was. How much growing we both had to do. A few days later, Joanne came by again, but this time she was quieter. She looked tired. She sat at the kitchen table while Maya painted and Leo lined up his toy cars in a precise parade across the floor. I saw Clark, I said, sliding a cup of tea toward her. She nodded. He told me. Is this too hard for you? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she looked at me, eyes red-rimmed but steady. This is the first time I've felt like a mother again in years. I swallowed hard. I didn't do right by you. Or by him, really. I kept pretending things would get better. That he'd outgrow the selfishness. But I see now I should have said more. A long time ago. You don't have to explain. But I want to, she said. We sat there a while, just listening to the kids. Later that week, Leo got sick. Just a cold, but it knocked him off his feet. He refused to eat anything but toast and only wanted to sleep in my bed. Maya, always perceptive, started acting out. I found her cutting the ears off her stuffed animals with a plastic butter knife, and when I asked her why, she just shrugged. It was hard. No sleep, worry gnawing at me, the looming pressure of work waiting in the background. I sat on the floor of the hallway one night after they'd finally gone to sleep and cried into my hands. The kind of cry that starts in your chest and doesn't make it out until it's clawed its way through everything. But the next morning, Leo's fever broke. And Maya climbed into my lap and whispered, I don't want you to go away like the other lady. I wrapped my arms around her so tight she squirmed, but didn't pull away. I'm not going anywhere, I said. And I meant it. A few months passed. Spring turned into summer. The house smelled like sunscreen and peanut butter sandwiches. Leo learned to ride a bike with training wheels and Maya started insisting on brushing her own hair, even though she always missed the back. I stopped checking my phone at night. I stopped expecting old ghosts to show up at the door. Work got busy again, so many kids, so many stories that felt familiar in ways I wished they didn't. But I had more patience now. I understood differently. When parents came in afraid they weren't good enough, I could look them in the eye and say, you're trying. That matters. Joanne remained steady. She showed up every Thursday to babysit while I went to yoga or just sat in my car with a coffee and a podcast, letting the quiet wash over me. She never spoke about Clark again, not directly. But she never missed a chance to tell the kids how loved they were, how special, how brave. Then one day, I got a call from the county courthouse. There was a family law panel being assembled to revise adoption policies and advocate for foster-to-adopt awareness. They wanted a community representative, someone who had lived it. They wanted me. The meetings were twice a month. Professional, but personal. I sat at a long table beside lawyers, judges, caseworkers, and across from them one day, Clark. He was representing a family in a guardianship case. His name was on the docket. He didn't see me right away. When he finally did, his eyebrows lifted slightly. But he didn't say anything. Not there. After the meeting, he caught up to me in the hallway. So, he said, you're doing this now? I am, I said. Been doing it for a while. He glanced down at his shoes. Didn't think you'd end up back in law buildings. I didn't think you'd end up doing pro bono for CPS clients, I said. Yet here we are. He exhaled through his nose. Weird, right? I shrugged. I call it full circle. There was an awkward silence before he asked, how are the kids? Thriving. He nodded slowly, like he didn't know how else to respond. I saw the pictures online, he added. Joanne posted one of Leo with a science project. He built a volcano. Took 3 tries. She said he was talking about being an engineer. He might. Or a zookeeper. Changes daily. He cleared his throat. Lila's pregnant again. I looked at him and waited. This one was planned, he said. I just nodded. That's good. She's worried. About what? She thinks I still talk about you too much. Do you? He didn't answer. Then, with a small smirk, he said, she thinks Joanne likes your kids more than ours. That one landed. I tilted my head slightly. Joanne doesn't play favorites. She just sees who needs her. His mouth opened, then closed. You know, I added, when you toasted to healthy ovaries, I thought you'd taken everything from me. My pride, my dignity, my dream. He looked uncomfortable. Dana, but here's the thing, I said, calm and steady. You gave me the best out I didn't know I needed. You made room for something better. Someone better. 2 someones. He rubbed the back of his neck. I wasn't trying to hurt you that night. Intentions don't erase impact. He stared at the floor. I'm not the villain, you know. No, I said. But you're definitely not the hero. I left him there in the hallway. The meetings continued. I got invited to speak at conferences. Other parents started reaching out, asking for advice, support, encouragement. I formed a little group, just 5 of us at first. We met once a month in the back room of a coffee shop. We laughed. We cried. We passed around pictures. We built something real. Then, last month, I got a message from Lila. It was short. Joanne missed our baby shower. She said she had a prior engagement. Was it one of your kids' things? I didn't reply. 2 days later, Joanne sent me a photo of Maya in her top costume, beaming, arms crooked just like we practiced. I told Lila I couldn't miss it. Maya asked me to be there. I went where I was wanted. I didn't need revenge, not really. I didn't want them to hurt the way I had. But watching them realize slowly, silently, that they didn't get the final say, that they couldn't define me or diminish what I'd built. That was enough. Actually, that was more than enough.